We turn now to the Strategic Defence Policy Statement that was released today. And the way the government has highlighted concerns about China in its long-term strategy for defence has surprised some New Zealand academics who warn China won't be pleased. The strategy includes moves in new areas, namely climate change, cybersecurity and outer space, as well as ramping up concern about some of the actions of countries larger and much more powerful than ours. Big regional power plays at stake here. Political reporter Govt explains.
Littered throughout the latest defence policy statement are concerns about international powers, namely the increasingly inward-looking United States, North Korea's growing nuclear and missile arsenals, and also, for the first time, a solid stance on our major trading partner China. The concern is the nation's increasing confidence and how it's planning to utilise that. One example our government's not happy with is its move to militarise the islands in the South China Sea. Defence Minister Ron Mark says this is the coalition government being completely transparent in its views.
They are friends and people that we wish to have better relationships with, but there are some things that are not conducive to peace and stability that raise opportunity for miscalculations that are unhelpful. So these matters are highlighted.
He delivered a speech today to an audience of academics, foreign diplomats and military personnel.
I think the document's pretty clear. I think actually we haven't been shy to state what we see.
Some were surprised to see such a bold stance on the matter. Victoria University's Professor of Strategic Studies Robert Asen is one.
Very clearly from the document you can see that on the whole the New Zealand government is concerned that China is seeking to change aspects of what it calls the rules-based order in parts of the Asia-Pacific. So I think China will find that this is a difficult one to swallow.
His colleague David Karpi agreed.
I don't think China's going to like us talking about the South China Sea. I don't think China's going to like the way it's characterised in the policy statement. But I think a lot of what it actually says is a kind of chronicling of facts that have happened. Islands have been built, bombers have landed on them, radar stations have been built and so on. And those are facts that nobody really disagrees with. But China's not going to like this.
National's defence spokesperson Mark Mitchell is urging caution, saying this government needs to be very clear on its plan and its position on China.
New Zealand has got long-standing relationships with China in lots of different areas, economic interests and trade interests that are pretty important to us.
But Mr Mark doesn't share the sentiment that China will be disappointed with the government's stance and says he's personally made sure of that.
There's nothing new to China. I've had this very discussion directly on a one-on-one bilateral conversation with their representative in Singapore at the Shangri-La Dialogue. There's nothing in here that we haven't discussed.
Mr Mark is confident the military will be well equipped for the future and will be reassessing the $20 billion military spending plans of the previous government. He's keen to see procurement of equipment that will mean New Zealand is ready on the front lines should we be called upon to fight.
We need to accept, and this government does, that when we equip our military, it is because primarily their first principle is that they are a combat force. They need to be combat capable. They need to have professional personnel, well-trained, well-resourced.
Climate change is also a major focus, which Mr Mitchell is pleased to see.
It's consistent with when we're in government in terms of continuing to make investment into equipment that is going to support our defence forces and being able to respond to climate change. So I think that's positive.
The strategy also points to a better utilisation of outer space in terms of defence communications and a big focus on cybersecurity and its uses as an offensive tool as well as a defensive one. With the release of the government's defence strategy out of the way, Ron Mark can now focus on the part he's looking forward to most, procurement. And he's pleased that despite his years of criticism at cost blowouts and shoddy decision-making, he now has a glowing report by Sir Brian Roche to prove to Cabinet his decisions will be sound. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Govt.